Okay, thank you all for being here. Um, let's see, what do we call it? Finding inspiration on the road. Uh, Everybody is affected by change in a different way. And when we downsized our house and sold it and moved to a condo in Florida and an RV on the road, I was kind of traumatized just a little bit. And so painting was not one of the things that I thought I'd ever be able to do because I didn't have room to spread all my stuff out. And believe me, I'm a big stuff person. I spent 14 years collecting uh, every every art form I could think of. I think I maybe missed the press, but it was hard to pack in my suitcase anyhow. So everything that I could do creatively, I did, and I managed to amass a collection that rivaled my favorite art supply stores in quantity and quality of the supplies I had available. And of course, when you move from that size studio to a purse, you really have to, you lose a lot. The first year we were on the road traveling in our RV, which we did buy, um, I took everything that I owned. I packed all of my pastels, I packed all of my oils, acrylics, watercolor, um, everything that it took to do the white line block printing, including the blocks that were uncut. So I was afraid I was never going to be able to paint again, and I made it impossible to paint because I couldn't decide what I wanted to use. And that happened, that went on for a whole year, that I hauled all of my stuff around with me. And um, I have probably 10,000 photographs because I saw so many beautiful places. And we traveled up the East Coast from Florida, stopping along the way. We stopped at the Jekyll Island and saw all of the beautiful sanctuary out there, and then through South Carolina into Georgia, back into Georgia, then back into South Carolina, up into North Carolina. We traveled through Virginia, and we stopped in Delaware at Lum's Pond, which is an absolutely beautiful place to go, and had the bejeebus scared us out of us as we went over the bridge that connected Virginia to Delaware in that place. And I got to do a lot of driving, which was a lot of fun, but that doesn't leave you time to paint or even think about painting because you're trying to give directions. Anyhow, come on year 2, and we're making our plans to travel, and COVID hits. And we think, well, so are we staying home this year or not? Because there was the travel ban in effect and nobody's supposed to go anywhere. But we decided, the motorhome is our home, and so we are staying at home, even traveling. So we took our courage and we called places, and most places said, well, you're not supposed to. You can come, you can stay. You've got to stay for 2 weeks and you can't leave your coach. And Maine was especially bad that way. And we just thought, well, let's start. And we traveled up the East Coast again, pretty much the same path we'd taken the year before, and stopping along at similar places. And most people were just happy to have it. The campgrounds were happy to have anybody because nobody was supposed to be traveling, but if you got there, they didn't turn you away. And that continued until we got into Connecticut, which was where we planned to spend an extended period of time. And just before we got into Connecticut, all of the states south of us started to enforce a travel ban. And Connecticut was going to enforce a travel ban. And we got in, we got parked. The owner there said, you can't come into the camp store. If you need anything, call. If we have it, we'll bring it out to you. Otherwise, just stay out of our way. And so we did. And we were in Connecticut in one campground or another for 3 weeks. And then we were going to move on to Maine. And the first campground in Maine, we called them and they said, well, you have to sign a disclaimer You have to sign this to tell us where you've been. You have to register with that. We said, fine, just give us the paperwork. We'll get it done and we're moving on. And then when we got there, they asked where we were residing. And we said, well, we live in our motor coach right now, and we've been on the road for 3 weeks. And they said, well, then you live in Connecticut, and Connecticut has just been approved for visitors to our state. So come on in, have a good time. We're happy to have you. And that's kind of the way it started, getting into Maine. And about that time, Roy and I had a conversation. He said, I never see you painting. And I said, yeah, that's because I feel like we're doing this trip together, and painting is a me thing. And I can't share it with you because you don't paint. And you really don't want to, paint with me. And he said, I'll tell you what, honey, I have a lot of stuff I'd really like to do. And I would really, really like it if you would start painting. I'll go do the stuff I want to do. And I won't have to take care of you or entertain you. And there you go. Finding inspiration on the road, the black and white of it. On a day trip to the beach at Biddeford Pool, I am enticed by the wonderful imagery of small groups of people. The sun is bright and warm, the tide is out, and people are walking and playing in the water. They're catching crabs or digging clams in the flats. I capture these moments with my camera. Then I pause to do a quick ink sketch of the surrounding hillsides, of the rocks in repose. Shapes and textures are wonderful. So it begins. Little by little I record, in black and white. They are mere sketches of what I see in passing. Inspiration is all around me. An outing for lunch, and I find simple things. Queen Anne's lace is in glorious abundance, and I sketch future birdseed. A couple taking their 2 young children out in kayaks, creating memories for the rest of their lives, capture my attention. A couple canoeing with their dog. Everyone needs a dog. As I sketch, the inspiration grows, and I leave notes. Imagine, color is on my mind, and I can feel the itch to open the paint box. An outing to Cape Porpoise, I come to visit rocks I remember and to share the experience via text with Kevin, who paints them and inspires me to paint them as well. And the dinghies on the dock never fail to make me smile. So I sketch them often and their leisurely attitudes. No one escapes my covert sketching. Picnickers, waiters, seekers. The dam has broken and the creativity rushes out. And there you have the start of it. I started by sketching. I picked up my pen, my brush, my Micron pen, and a piece of paper, and started sketching on anything that wasn't nailed down. And then I got a little more serious about it, and got actual cardstock so that I could make pictures for my friends who had asked me to write to them along the way. And of course, I collected and collected and collected, and after about 6 months, I managed to put together a little packet and send it out. So everybody got a little bit of what I'd been doing in a package. And I went from the pen and ink sketches on note cards, thinking, gee, this will be a really great thing to do, note cards, because people will enjoy buying those. Why don't I make note cards? So I started this. Well, there's another video. And this one is a little, and yeah, this one I have to talk through because I couldn't figure out how to make it do what I wanted it to do from start to finish. And this I call Works on the Roads. And if you have any questions anywhere in here, just feel free to type it out in the chat. Thou shalt paint everything and every day. And that became what I did, because if I saw something that I wanted to paint, I would say to Roy, I got to stop and paint. And he'd say, great. You shall forget all you think you know, and even more all you've been taught. So I took that step to mean that it didn't matter what I'd learned, it mattered what I practiced. And so I started practicing the art of just sketching. Not everything has a name on it. We took a trip to Lubec, Maine, and the morning we were there, we spent 2 nights there. And when we woke up in the morning, it was absolutely glorious, like this picture here. And I went out in front of our room, looking across the water, and sat at a table just like this and sketched everything that I could see around me for 4.5 hours. Sketched being on note card paper, like ebbing tide. You can see the divider down the middle. And I sketched the boats and the seal watching. There's a seal down here in the right hand corner, and he was watching the watchers watch. Mulholland Point is on Campobello, and that was Roosevelt's summer White House in Canada. We couldn't go there, but I could see it, so I painted it. And then the quiet time was from a photograph that I took the last minute of the last day we were there. And this young woman or older woman was sitting there, and just sitting there and looking across the water and watching the tide come and go. And that's what you do when you're there. We went to the Bass Harbor Lighthouse in Mount Desert Island. That's part of the Acadia Park. And I took a photograph. I'd been there before, and I thought, I like the way the light does that. Shines on one side and not the other. And so I picked it up and I painted it. And Acadia National Park, Eagle Lake was a constant source of inspiration from one end or the other. I think this is the Long Pond end of it. Hunter's Beach is down at the southern end of the Acadia National Park, and I sat there one afternoon and photographed a young woman and her family. She had the longest, most glorious red hair I've ever seen, and she looked like a mermaid. And Jordan Pond, it shows up in many places. The bubbles we hiked the first year, we had to go back and hike them again the second year. And it was truly, I traveled with the paper in my pocket and I pull it out and I painted it. This was from a bicycle trip that we took, one of the hardest roads I've had to ride with Roy. He'd take me out in the morning, we'd ride for 3 hours on the bicycles, and then we would hike in the afternoon, probably to give our legs a break. But I got beautiful pictures that just kept me smiling and happy. And it was the season for the Queen Anne's lace. And I took my time sometimes and sketched it sometimes, and found inspiration in rocks in a box on a stairwell. Revisiting the bubbles. You never know who you're going to meet when you're on the top of the mountain. This was my summer studio, where I took a couple of pictures for me so that I would know where I'd been and he would know where I'd been. When we got to the last of our main destinations, there was Porpoise Point, and I went there and sat just about every afternoon for 2 weeks and painted the rocks. And they were never the same. And the sketches that I did first to make them happen just were quick, so that I would have an idea where I wanted the watercolor to go when I got to it. And it doesn't always look like what you think it will, but I gave myself permission to explore and to figure out what I really wanted to paint. I figured out how to make my sky look like a summer sky every single day and water look like water, even when the water was gone. And the Queen Anne's lace added grace to old buildings that looked like they wanted to fall down, and new ones that looked like they'd last forever. And I would capture pictures of people but the things you see along the way get to be part of what you want to spend your time doing. We visited Monhegan and the signs of summer. I think I went by this poor lady hanging out her wash for 2 hours to get enough pictures to paint. And as we're leaving Monhegan, I sat on the dock and I looked back at the village and tried to get it all in that tiny little piece of paper. I have memories of walking down Lobster Cove from 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I don't know, forever. First time I was on Monhegan. This was the Singing River in Alabama. The Trail of Tears runs through there, and the story of the people who were forced from their homes followed the river, and the story followed the Singing River, and they came back to it at times, and we were parked in a campground just across the street from it. So I just had to paint those cliffs, and you might not be able to see them, but in the upper left-hand corner, there's houses built there, but they're so perfectly camouflaged, it just looks like green on the cliffs. And then, of course, I have found the beach, and the beach, that's my current, I gotta get there, be there thing, because those umbrellas are, they're eye catchers. People do all kinds of things on beaches. They fish, they lay in the sun, they lay in the shade. But the sky was the fun part. Well, maybe the people were a lot of fun too. And it didn't matter that there were what, lines out of place, because this really is just about capturing the moment and doing it in the best way you can, and then sharing it with your friends. And they come in a nice size for sharing. It's interesting, the people you see. This was one of the postcard size pictures that I made. This young lady was out selling things, headbands in her left hand and umbrellas in her right. She's trying to make a living for $10 a day, and I remembered her, so I sketched it. But the beach keeps calling me back, and it doesn't matter if it's sunny or not. These rocks, when I saw them, I saw a young lady lying there, and from her head on the right side down to her toes on the left side, she just laid there and looked like she was sleeping or had laid there waiting. And next to her was a pile of other rocks. And if you stood on an angle, those other rocks looked like a man's face watching. I thought it was kind of cool. I revisited the crab catchers in color because I really liked the imagery of the little girl and her grandfather. And I have to admit that I swiped pictures from the television. This was actually a canal in China that was on something. I have no idea. And flowers, nothing's safe. If I can see it for long enough, I'll paint it. And you don't have to have a lot of detail to make it happy either. You shall not adore your good drawings and promptly forget your bad ones. Like I said, it's not about what you paint, it's that you paint. You shall not paint with exhibition in mind, nor to please any critic but yourself. And I know we are all our own worst critics, but if you let it go and just do it, then, you know, I've never heard of anybody famous who did nothing. You improve with time if you keep working at it. It's called Talking to the Rock. I didn't think that Grandma needed a head because we all know what she was saying. Old friends. You can't have enough of your old friends. I made a few exceptions to the gotta sketch it before you paint it. And usually this one is a 5x7 in real life, as is this one. And they are most notable because they're missing the ink marks. But I think that that's just because I covered them up so well. And then I went back to things that I'd done before in other media and experimented with how would it work if I did it this way. You can tell that I got more courageous as I went through because I started tackling slightly more difficult subjects and seeing if I could simplify them or not. What do you do when you have to have a birthday card for somebody who is an aspiring young artist? Well, you collect all your toys, you take a picture, and you paint it. This is the kind of picture you paint when you're sitting on a beach in Indian Pass. Actually, I was sitting in the coach, which was on the beach at Indian Pass, and the pelicans were joining the morning crew. They were everywhere. I love Florida for the pelicans. This is part of the Old Friends series, and this is old good books or old friends. I have a variety that I love and I read. And people would send me pictures or post pictures of themselves with their old friends. And I would paint them. Everybody needs their old friends. They're good friends. And their wine. Keep on smiling. And don't be afraid to paint everybody. So that's my slideshow presentation. I also have a demonstration of how I painted. Oh, thank you, everybody. That's not all of them. That's just all I could fit in an hour or so. Somebody has a question. Is speed of sketching a necessary pace for this kind of sketching? Not really. I think that you should sketch at your own pace, and you ought to put down what you think is important. And if you can talk about it while you're doing it, that kind of sets the pace. And if you can't talk about it, so does that. The sketching that is currently most effective for me is to do a really quick line drawing and then ignore it. And I do it in ink. They're not really contour drawings, Susan. It just looks like it because that's how I hold my brush. It's a quick thing. So if you want to see the video of the sketch, the painting I did, I have one for you. Raise of hands. Does anybody want to see a demo? Yeah, there's enough of you saying yes that okay, that's next then. Let's see if I can find it. I think I have to do the advanced share, or maybe it's, yep, there it is. I got to tell you, I learned most of what I know right now at the last second.
So Robin, do you have a question? You got to unmute.
No, Barbara, I was just raising my hand because I'd like to see the painting.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
This is wonderful. She should write a book.
Yeah, books don't talk fast enough. Okay, let's see if we've got it up. There you go. The minimized, optimized full screen view. Here we go, kids. This is a long one. It's 21 minutes. I can fast forward through the first 19 seconds because I don't do anything but draw, but that's what you're watching it for, isn't it? I'm showing you my setup, my big deal thing, and I've got a video about that too, which I'll show you afterwards so that you have all the details. Note to self, make sure you take your water bottle out of the cup before you start your video because it takes forever. I will start talking in a minute. And I actually show you a picture of what I'm painting too.
And what are you drawing on, Sarah?
I am working on the Canson watercolor block, the Monteval, and it's a 140-pound cold press. I'm working with the Micron 003. And about the time I finish this sketch, I'll start talking. I know it's hard to tell now, but I'm painting a barn just so you can get an idea about what's going on there.
Are you sketching from a photograph or from memory?
I'm sketching from a photograph. The tripod you can see above my paint is holding my phone. It's a really tiny picture, but it doesn't have to be big. I always believed that I couldn't draw, but I can imagine where things are in reality, and draw a line where I think that'll be. Handy dandy travel brush. It's an Escoda, I think. All right, that's so you can see close up. And I have this favorite place of painting by the window. And it obviously puts a lot of light where it doesn't need to be. So that's the sketch. That's about as much sketching as I did.
Sketches. I like to start with the sky.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me talking. You might have to turn your volume up.
It gives character to the whole painting. I sometimes get carried away with.
I said I sometimes get carried away with the amount of blue ink I put on my brush.
This guy's just got a little bit of sky here and there.
Little bits of sky here and there. I don't want blue sky everywhere. I just need some blue.
Not too much.
And I have dried my brush to spread it around a little bit, what's already there. And you can see I'm just cleaning my brush there now, because I want the sky to be kind of a gray day. I get it wet and then I dry it so that I can move the moisture that's already there.
It gives you kind of a gray day. Need a little tiny bit of
Can you hear me talking?
warmer blue
Uh,
down here.
It's low volume, a little bit.
Yeah. So I just picked up warmer blue to warm up the sky in the lower part of the painting.
Sky appears to us in a little bit here, a little bit there. In this particular painting, I've got quite a few trees.
In this particular painting, I have quite a few trees, so I'll put in the greens of the trees next. And you never have the right greens, so I'm constantly mixing my own.
I use a little bit of brown. and
A little bit of brown, a little
bit
blue, a little green, a little warm green, a little cool green.
I'm really looking for a dark
I'm looking for a dark green.
color.
And it always dries lighter than what you put it down. So you put it down and don't worry about how dark it is, because you're going to go over it again.
Just sticking in a little bit of tree here and there, and you know, it's gonna dry.
And you can see by the way I'm using my brush that it's not about how I use my brush the way you've been taught you should by.
We have this odd color, gray black, which is just
A darker
Yeah.
color. I'm looking for an almost black, which is a little more of the dark brown and a little more
maybe a little
blue.
bit bluer, I guess.
I'm going
I
to
guess it's-
fill in the really dark spots, which will be the
Nice.
openings of the,
It's kind of dark, and it goes just under the
shadows.
ears on that poor saggy what do you call it, roof?
Are you working on
Can you tell
very
me
wet
that?
paper or not very wet paper?
Thinking it-
there's no water on the paper at all.
None,
I'm
okay.
working on a 140-pound cold press.
and we-
It's the Canson watercolor block, the Montval,
Mhm.
which I fell in love with when I was first starting out.
here and there.
And the only water on there is what I've put on
The
while you've
places
been
that
watching.
you wanna have
So it's a dry block.
The places you would like to have things stand out just a little bit more, and it's just a really quick, almost non-statement about the statement.
Well, I've got my volume all the way up on my
I think I wanted to do the
computer and can't hear me.
foreground. Give us a little bit of this.
I'm talking about painting the foreground, and I'm mixing the
dry
yellow ochre
grass look.
to create a kind of
And I
warm,
don't
bright.
want a lot of color, but I
So
want
Sarah, what kind of watercolors are you using?
I
just
I think that what I have is Winsor Newton, and it might be the Winton part of it. So I'm not sure whether what I'm using is the really good quality stuff or the not so good quality stuff. But I figured out that if you put enough of it on, the quality is
It's,
more in the application.
So
in
are
my
they
photograph.
the dried blocks or did you put them in from tubes?
Most of what's in there now, the reds are the dried blocks that came with it. Here you go. I'm going to show you what I'm looking at. Now it makes more sense, right?
In the front, and it adds
And what I'm
color
telling you
to
is that
the
there's a
texture, but
it-
it doesn't
barns have stuff in the foreground, but
doesn't
all it
do
does is make a
much
blob,
for
so I'm
the
going to leave it
picture.
out.
It just kind of makes it look clumpy, so I'll work it in as just a slight.
I went through the blues and greens and browns so fast that I had, and the yellow ochre that I had to replace it. If it looks like a new puddle, it is new.
To let you know that there's something going on here that's not quite the same as everything else. And then we put a little darker here and there so that you can see that there's a little bit of roll in the landscape. We want to lighten up this back here a little bit. It's probably going to be too bright, but we know how to fix that.
It's probably going to be too bright, but we know how to fix that.
Add a little bit of the darker, because that will brighten it too. Now, where's our light coming from? In the picture, it's kind of coming from this direction over here. So I'm going to brighten up or darken. Let's say let's darken the shadow sides of things.
We're darkening the shadows on the trees.
A little bit in this tree here. A little bit on this one. Keep a little bit of this yellow ochre and golden up this.
A ravine in the foreground, I want to make it stand out more.
Valley here. It's okay if you leave a little bit of your old color on there because it just adds character. There's a lot of light back here. But then it transitions to a little bit of shadow coming this way. A little bit here.
Yep, I'm going for the reds.
They're intimidating. But, let's just like.
Four-tired barn. Changed my mind about it. That was the wrong color.
So Sarah, it's hard to tell in the picture. Can you tell us what colors you have in your paint box?
In my paint box, my brush just went into the yellow ochre. Let's see. There should be some place that I can draw on this. Well, from the yellow, that's a cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, white, lemon yellow. I have the burnt sienna, burnt umber. This is a warm green. I don't know what they call it. I'm sure it has a name. And then a cool green. I have orange, red, and alizarin crimson, and purple. Which purple is it? It's the purple in that red corner. And then over by the greens, I have a phthalo blue and a cobalt blue. Or I have, instead of cobalt, I have French ultramarine, and I use them almost interchangeably.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Do you use the white much?
No, not really. I find that when you use white, and especially this stuff that comes in a tube, it just whitens the color that's under it. It doesn't act like the white that you think that you'd be using. In the sky, the warmer blue, the lower blue is the phthalo, and the other blue is the cobalt. I used the mixture in the foreground with the white in it because it was more muted than the other colors. So the white will also mute colors. Nope, not enough color. I think I try and color that 3 times before I change my mind and pick another color. Yeah, I have no patience waiting for it to dry. The brush comes with the set.
So do you ever use a hair dryer?
No, I don't have the patience for a hairdryer either. You have to have a cord, and most of the painting that I do, I'm sitting on a rock somewhere or a beach chair, and no, I just wait for those gentle breezes to cool it and dry it for me.
So when you're outside, do you work on an easel or do you work in your lap?
I work in my lap. I'm working at for size, about 8 inches square, 7 by 10 inches, 6 by 9 inches, 5 by 7 inches, or postcards, which are also 5 by 7. I think I just explained that there's always junk around buildings like that, and I'm going to put a little bit of it in around the edges.
Sarah, did you find that people were interested in what you were painting, like especially on the beach? The people that you were painting, were they curious or?
They don't stop very often. You know, they walk and their necks get longer, or they're just not interested. But some of that has to do with COVID. They don't want to get too close because they don't know if it's safe. But occasionally there'll be people who want to know, and I carry lots of business cards, and I've gone through maybe 300 or 400 of them, but nobody ever calls.
They're really beautiful.
Thank you.
I love how loose you've kept them all. They're really, they're special. What a cool documentation of your trip too.
Thank you. And I find that's the most important thing to me, is that I have visual pictures of where I've been, and I can share them. They're really easy. I make most of my artwork. Most of this artwork is available as note cards. Of course, I haven't posted it anywhere, so nobody knows, but it's all available, and I can print it in 3 or 4 different sizes if you have an occasion. My favorite Christmas card ever was the one that I sent out this year, which was the girl sitting in the beach chair with the umbrella, and sending everybody warmth and sunshine for the holidays. I think I've decided this guy needs to be more, and now that it's dry, I can go. And I've started with
Attitudes.
loaded up pigment in a relatively dry brush.
Can't see most
And I
of
put the
it.
pigment down, and then I add a little bit of moisture with my brush,
Just these
and I'll drag the
people.
new wet color around to create the undersides of clouds.
Sometimes you think you got it, and then sometimes you
And
don't.
sometimes you're the windshield, and sometimes you're the bug.
windshield, Sometimes you're the bug. Don't be afraid to own the sky. It's yours. You can make it any.
Don't be afraid to own the sky. It's yours. You can do anything you want to do. You can make it any way you want. Four more minutes. think that those spots where I've got too much water in are just about as important as the ones where I don't have enough. I promise the next time I do one of these videos, I will do it in constant light so that you don't have too much light and too much shadow. I promise. I was talking to my son about how do you add audio behind a PowerPoint presentation? And he said, well, it can't be done. I said, great. He said, unless you have it playing while you're showing the video, and then you'll get it consistently. And that didn't happen. And then he told me that if I wanted to do photography or record pictures of myself painting, just let him know. He's got all the equipment. He'd be happy to come visit while I paint. So there's some potential out there for a better video, certainly with better sound. And about this time, I'm thinking you need to stop painting because you're going to mess it up.
So I keep it loose.
Keep it loose.
Because I don't want to
Do you usually paint flat?
want to
Yes, I do.
too much information in there.
So that's what it ended
When it
up like,
gets
more or
a
less.
little
I
bit
did sit and
dry
play with
here, I'll
my
probably go
my pen
back in
here and there.
and add a few marks with my brush, my pen. But it's too wet to do it now. Of
I
course,
just said that
won't be able
that
to
I'd probably do a little bit of sketching on it, and that it was too wet and I shouldn't. And then I picked up the brush and said, well, let's do it now. Anyhow.
emphasize what it is you really want us to see.
Whatever it is I really want you to see needs to be
how dark this doorway is
highlighted.
and how broken. I want you to see these little bits of details. I want you to know that this comes off here and you're not going to really see it. If I don't give you the line back. And once I've done that, I can see that I want to add just a little more lavender roof there. Soften that edge.
So is this a Florida barn?
No, actually, it's a Connecticut barn. It's around the corner from my daughter's house, and I have driven by it 1,000 times. And every time I went by it, I thought it's not going to be there when I go around the corner next time. And finally, I just stopped and said, now it really might not be there because it was just getting older and older and older.
I want you to see a little bit more of the tree, so I'll just stick in some branches here and there. But you believe that there's some kind of something going on. I think I want to add just a tiny bit of this.
I started looking at the photograph and recognized that there was a hillside behind the barn.
Hillside behind here. nail side actually goes just above that roof line.
Where in Connecticut?
Deep River.
Well, I don't know if that made it better or worse, but I'm gonna live with it. Take a little bit of pigment out.
This is
here.
part of the reason why I don't paint on an angle, because I'm always chasing drips. But I think that's part of the deal.
Create that illusion of just
And
another
if I were working on
dimension there.
a bigger piece of paper, the drips would be, it would be more welcome. In this size category, it's kind of, drips make a
Okay.
big difference.
I'm calling it done.
Okay, we're counting down, 9 more seconds.
Thanks for joining me.
There you go.
Nice there. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyhow, that's how I do it. And I want you to know that I had painted 6 new little paintings trying to figure out how I was going to record it. And that was the only one that wasn't a beach. And I did one that was, I recorded it in slow motion. So when I replayed this 5-minute video, it took 59 seconds. And I think that's about as much as I had to say about it too. So I have one more little thing to share with you. If you can stand anymore, or do you want to ask questions first? All right. I have one more little tiny video that I've got to share. And then you have to figure out where it is every time.
Sarah,
Yeah.
Sarah, I do have a quick question. Do you always have a photo that you have as a reference besides having your sketch?
If I'm going to be painting indoors, then I always have the photo and the sketch comes from that. And if I'm painting plein air, I take a photograph so I can look at it later, but I never go back to the plein air work to add to it from the photo.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Sarah,
Yeah.
what is the pan, the kind of pan that you use again? Can you show it close up?
Yeah, watch this one. This is the one that hopefully you'll be able to hear it. It's a micron.
That is.
So I know you're all interested in what I carry in my travel bag.
So that's my travel bag.
I carry several sizes of paper. I have Aquarel by Arches in cold press in a square one, which is about 8 by 8. I have a 7 by 10. I have a 5 by 7 by Fabriano. I have a 6 by 9 watercolor block. These are all blocks. I like not having to worry about wrinkling paper. And then I carry the postcards by Ken's and the watercolor postcards. And I use the micron pens. My favorite is the double lot 5. But I also carry an 03 just for a wider stroke. My water is an old orange juice bottle, and the bottom of the a water bottle.
That's
And I
different.
use that for a cup. Always have water and a cup with me. So I don't have to worry about it. I use the Winsor and Newton watercolor set, 12, I think, 10 or 12.
Can't hear the voice.
14.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
Sarah, your
you
voice
can
is
see
not
I don't
coming good.
Okay,
worry
so I use the
about
Winsor and
the
Newton
clean colors.
with
I
14
use
colors. I don't clean
similar
it because I
colors
use
all
all the
the
same colors all
time.
the time. And,
And
you know,
then I
if you get
have
desperate, you do.
travel brushes.
These brushes are
These are
Escoda travel brushes.
Escoda. My favorite is
My
the
favorite is the
little
little
one
one on the
over
left
here.
because it fits neatly in my
It,
paint box. And I put it in there, so
fits
it's always,
nicely in my watercolor box.
and it makes it so
And
that I can always have a brush with me.
Never without one, even if I forget.
Even if I forget to put in the
anything else.
other brushes, I have that
Basically,
one.
all of this
And those are the
goes
things that I
with me
travel with all the time,
everywhere.
whether I'm at the
And
beach or
any
in the
trip to the
RV or on a
beach
boat. And that's the
can be
painting that
captured
I did today at the
just
beach. And it's just
by
another,
sitting still for 5 or 10 minutes.
and this one took about 10 minutes to
Because I
paint.
have all
And
of
I learned
my
something new about
equipment
skies
with
with that
me.
one, which I thought was kind of cool.
Mm.
And that's all I have recorded. So now do you have questions, or what are your questions? Anybody want to come paint with me?
So someone asked, what was the name of your ink pen?
The ink pen
Right.
is Micron. Let's see, can you read that?
Mhm.
Mm.
Micron, that's my favorite, is the 005. I actually carry probably 6 or 8 of them. There's 3 005s in my hand. This one is the 03, and it gives me a broader, and it, you know, Micron is my favorite, but you can use any of the nibbed pens like this. And then it just gives you a fine line and lots of control and easy to paint over because the double lots are so fine. So that's the kind of pen I use. And then the brushes, currently I like Escoda, but you know, if it'll hold paint, I love it.
Well, thank you so much. It was great. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Yes, I have one. I just
Okay.
wonder, what did you learn about the sky in the last painting you showed us?
Okay, in the last painting I showed you, I used a similar technique to what I had done in the demo, but let me show you. So this is kind of cheesy, but where you see these big smooth lines, I had wet my paper here and there
Oh,
with water and not everywhere, because if you put water everywhere, then you have no control over what you put down, or your control is so absolute you don't get the spontaneity. And I had just brushed little bits of water like this with my brush, and then I took the paint and I put it down heavily here and here, and then just ran it back through the water, kind of like that, and it made all of these wonderful strokes that
yes,
were entirely different than how I'd been doing it.
yeah.
And I normally would put down these solid colors and then I would take the water and move it up from there. But I started with water already there, but not everywhere, because all of these white spots that you see didn't have water on them.
Right. Yes, very nice.
And so it gave me a whole new perspective about sky, which was already different than anything I'd ever done before, because I worked in pastels.
Mm, amazing.
Sarah, do you rinse your brush out fully? Like do you get rid of all the color that's in it and then move from one to the next, or
It really depends on what I want to accomplish. When I'm working color in color, I don't worry about it because generally, but if I want to change colors, absolutely, then yes. If I'm going from a blue sky to a red barn, I'm going to clean most of it, well, all of it if I can, out.
and then do
Uh,
you use like a cloth or a paper towel or napkin to take excess water out or not?
Depends on if I have one handy. I
Okay.
have used just about everything from a cloth that's handy. I like the napkins that the better restaurants give you that feel like woven cloth. And so I have a pocket full of those and I carry them around, and they're artwork in themselves because I wipe my brushes on them constantly. And I've used my pants. I found out that the white shorts that I wore to the beach today have an orange stretch on it, right across my thigh. I must have known that that was what I wanted to have there, because I don't think it's going to come out. It's red. But yes, and I have used my finger and the back of my neck, just hoping that my hair would cover it.
Do you ever use gouache?
I have used gouache. It's a whole different medium. I had to get around the fact that they put honey in it as the medium to move it around. And then I thought, oh, well, that would explain the bugs. But I haven't mastered it yet because I'm still not patient. So having the white available just kind of makes the colors a little less colorful. And I really, really like piling the pigment on, bless you, the pigment on thick as if I were applying it with a pastel. So the gouache just takes some of the brilliance out of it. So yeah, I've done gouache, but I haven't mastered it yet. So I'm not ready to do a demo on the gouache.
I came in a little late. Did you do anything with pastels?
No, I did not do a pastel demonstration. That I'm going to get my son to record for me. I just not. Then I can edit out all the tough parts.
Yeah. Huh.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And we can still do some questions, but I just wanted to tell people before they leave that next month for our first Tuesday, we're going to ask people to paint. So we're going to plan a plein air evening painting, and we'll pick a location.
I'm coming.
So we want, as Sarah said, you can't just watch, you have to get out there and do it.
Do it.
It makes a difference. Like I said, I've never heard of anybody famous who did nothing. And if famous is what you want, you got to do at least something. And the only way you can fail is to do nothing.
Interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Sarah.
Anybody else
Thank
have
you.
Thank you. Your
questions?
paintings are
Sarah.
beautiful.
I miss you
Thank you.
guys.
You continue to inspire us.
Oh, thank you. So
Bye.
see you next month.
Are you in Florida?
I am in Florida.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, I am. You want to hang out? You don't have to click off. We can sit and talk all night if you want. I told my husband I would text him when I was done, and he's not expecting me anytime soon.
Sarah, do you ever have artist block, like writer's block? Do you ever have, do you ever have those moments where it's like, oh, I just can't?
These are my blocks. And actually the black and white that I started with was how I got out of my block. And I did some that I absolutely hated, and some I had to scribble on because I didn't have my color with me. I just had black and white. And I tried working the no tan with the markers, and I just felt like I had no control because it made these big black marks, and I'm looking for these tiny little things. So writer's block, painter's block, yeah, it's a thing. It's a real thing. And what I generally do when I'm really bad is I will sit in the sunshine by where I painted. I should show you my sunshine. I can show you, look you over my
Yeah.
shoulder.
Good.
You see that window over there?
Oh,
Oh, yes.
Oh, nice.
That's my view, and that table that you see there is where I sit to paint. It's got an orchid on it that's bigger than my house. But I will go there and I will sit to paint, or I will go to the beach, and the sunshine makes a difference for me.
mm.
Just getting out of the house
Brown.
and feeling the heat on my back. I might do nothing, or I might do something like the Christmas card, and just sitting there, and I'll take pictures. And then when I feel better, I can go back in and I can paint anything. And I can't always do it in the medium of my choice, but I can at least do it.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite medium?
Right this minute, it's watercolor.
So what you're working with? All right, great.
And that's because I can take it with me anywhere.
Hmm.
And I put that purse I showed you on my back and taking it up. Let's see, we went to the Bubbles, and we went up Cadillac Mountain, and we hiked over the loop, and it's on my bicycle if it's not on my back, so that I can stop anywhere. And usually it's a really good excuse to stop bicycling because I'm exhausted. And Roy will let me relax, rest, unwind, wind down for as long as I'm painting. I can sit there all day long and he won't make me move. So there's that too.
So Sarah, with the watercolor, once it dries, do you wrap it or anything, or do you just let it float in a folder? I mean, they're small enough where you can probably do that, right?
Well, I like I said, this one, it's dry. I don't have to worry about anything, and so it's just covered up.
Nice.
The paintings I've done, with one exception, are in my file drawer, and it's about 20 inches wide. And of that 20 inches, the sheets of paper take about half that space. I've used, there are, in the blocks I have, there are 20 or 15 or 20 sheets, and I've used 5 of them. That means that not everything has survived, but it also means that they're really small and they fit nicely in a drawer. And that also means that I could scan them all. And yeah, so I've got nearly everything I painted scanned. That's how come you got to see it on the video. Yeah, it is funny, Kelly.